Yes, guys, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur with your boys David and Jack. And with Mikey Moore signing a new contract at Spurs, which breaks the current trend of academy prospects leaving because they've had better pathways to first teams at other clubs, but also earning more money at other clubs. So it does bring us on to a discussion today that we actually feel is very important, because the feeling is that we would not have been able to keep Mikey Moore around if we did not change the payment structure within our academy. Because Paratici, just before he left, before his ban, actually, he increased the pay structure for the youth players at Tottenham Hotspur, which had been something that previous Spurs Academy head, John McDermott, was against, as he wanted to keep the players young, hungry, and driven in their development rather than financially driven as teenagers. So the discussion we are going to have today is, what is the best strategy for Spurs' youth academy to adopt going forward? John McDermott or Paratici? So Jack, we'll start with you. Do you go with John McDermott, who is, look, it's very old school, but I also agree with it? Or do you go with Paratici's, which is sort of the new era, which you sort of need if you want to get up to date with current world-class academies at big clubs?
Yeah, I'm going to go pro Paratici on this one, Dave. Maybe that's not a surprise because I've defended him in the past, but a few reasons I'm actually going to give here is that, you know, it came originally from actually Ali Gold's article, and it said that Paratici has put an emphasis towards paying to bring in new players into the academy on top of those that they are already developing, similar to the model utilized by the likes of Chelsea. It is expected that the plan for that model is to start bringing in players over 18 from around the world. Two parts on that I'm going to kind of get stuck into why I think actually Paratici's plan, or sort of Paratici's academy strategy, if you will, is actually better than I think John McDermott's, or maybe more in line with what actual Spurs fans might want. Because at least where I stand on it, Dave, is I do want an academy that's hungry, like John McDermott said, but I also kind of want one of the more talented academies. I'd rather have players maybe in the academy that's some of the best in the world at their age, some of the best in the world in their age group. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to make it right away, that they're going to, you know, reach the potential and the ceilings that everybody has set out for them. But a lot of us, I feel like in the past, as, you know, sort of Spurs fans, have either rightly or wrongly said, doesn't feel like there are a lot of great players coming out of the academy right now. It doesn't feel like our academy is nearly as talented as the likes of a Man United, as the likes of a Chelsea or anything like that, or even an Arsenal. And now with this sort of golden generation that's coming through that I'm sure you even know more about than I do, Dave, I feel like if we were to preserve them and keep them around and keep them sort of, you know, focused on Spurs and keep them incentivized to believe that there is a pathway to that first team at the Tottenham club, I feel like you have to find some sort of, you know, blend, or maybe more of a blend between John McDermott's and Paratici's, but I'm leaning more towards Paratici's on it, because I do feel like in order to keep the most talented players around in your academy, you're going to need to do one of two things. You're either going to need to prove to them that there is a clear pathway to that first team. Right now at Spurs, it's not clearly the case that there is the most clear pathway. So you're going to need to also maybe do something else, which is maybe financially sort of incentivize them to believe that you believe in them, if that makes any sense. Because what it was before, it felt like John McDermott's sort of strategy was, no matter how talented you are, you should want to play for Spurs. You should want to play for this glorious football club. And I completely agree with that type of sentiment. But at the same time, not everybody is as passionate of a Spurs fan or is as passionate of a player as maybe we would be if we were in that academy. They might be motivated by getting into first team football as quickly as possible. They might be motivated by developing their own player career as much as possible. So I just feel like Paratici's strategy kind of does one of two things. It either sort of tells the player that we believe in them, that one day they will get that spot in the first team, or it sort of kind of establishes some sort of, you know, factor that Spurs, if they were to improve their academy further, they have the spending power to bring in more talented players. And the way I sort of lean on it, Dave, is yes, I want hungry players, but I also want extremely talented players, because in order for them to really make it into that first team, in order for them to become the next Harry Kane, become the next Dele Alli, Sonny, whoever it may be, they're going to also need to be extremely talented. They can't just be hungry. They need to be talented. And so I feel like Paratici's strategy not only gives us sort of the best talented players, but I think it also sort of motivates those players to maybe think that Spurs do see a first team pathway to them, because at the moment it feels like there wasn't much of one.
Do you know what, Jack? I think you raised some very valid points on it. And for me, I'm torn, right? I look around football now, I'm concerned. I do think that the wages are extortionate. I think when the going gets tough, you don't really see hungry players. I think we're going into a world now, or especially in football, where losing is acceptable. And I think that is because of something like Paratici's payment method. But, you know, with John McDermott, although I agree with the method, Jack, about teenagers not being incentivized by money, keeping them hungry so that they do develop. Because if we're being realistic, right, people do lose hunger the more money they get. And I go to one of the biggest sports stars in the world, Conor McGregor. When he was broke, up and coming, you know, he went to the depths of despair, even in fights, you know, and came out the other side of it. But as soon as he made that money, Jack, now when the going gets tough,
lost that edge.
He taps out. He's lost that hunger, that edge to get through them tough moments. So, you know, it's
the chip on the shoulder people refer to, right? Sometimes like guys that are hungry have that chip on their shoulder that actually gets them past, you know, certain, you know, motivations. And if you give them too much financial incentive right away, they might lose that chip on their shoulder, right?
Exactly. Absolutely spot on, Jack. But the problem with someone like McDermott's method is, right, and Dean Rastrick, once John McDermott left to take up a role in the FA, Dean Rastrick, who currently left at the end of this season, he also continued on that. But what the problem was, Jack, is not only were you seeing some of our best academy prospects leave in order to go to first-team footballs elsewhere, and I have the names here. I have a full list, actually. You have Romain Mundalu's on his way out now. Samuel Ameu. You have Noni Madueke, Dennis Sirkin, Jabril Okadina, and Lewis Binks and Rio Griffiths, who have all left in the past to go to first teams elsewhere. And with first team football, you get paid first team wages. And the reason why we were losing them is because we were competing against clubs who had a pathway for them and put them into the first team squad. We were only trying to keep them in the academy and offering them academy wages. So therefore, we were losing them. And then you question why we're not seeing any players come through from the academy into the first team, because the reality is we're losing our best ones. That's why they're being paid more and being offered first team football or being put into the first team squad. So when you look at our current situation now in the academy, Jack, we, like you said, and like, you know, I've described a few times, we've got a current golden generation, if you like. And I question, under John McDermott's methods, would players like Alfie Devine, Jamie Donnelly, Alfie Dorrington, who else have you got there? That's
Dane Scarlett, even if you're going to keep him around forever, right? He's obviously on loan. You have other players like Alfie Dorrington, like you mentioned. You have Jude Sunset Bell, who we've just bring in. But I don't know, Dave. I don't want to cut across the point that you're making right now, but maybe I'll just add something into the mixer here. You not only want to sort of keep the very talented golden generation around through either some financial incentives or that sort of like, yes, we believe in you and you will get your spot in the first team. But also, like, not every academy talent is going to come from the likes of the UK or the United Kingdom, Dave. You also want to bring in some talents from abroad. You want to bring in some talents from Brazil or some talents from Germany or wherever it may be. And we know that there are guys like Gavin Bazunu, even from your own home nation, that were able to go to the Man City Academy at a very young age and were, you know, sought out. And now he's moved on from the Man City Academy because he didn't maybe see that pathway into the first team. But still, like, you would rather maybe have an academy that's so talented, full of players that are going to be the next and up and coming big players of their generation, then maybe you would rather have just solely players that are just hungry and, you know, just wanting to play in that sport, in that first team. I think you just need a bit of a mix between guys that are, you know, hungry to be in the team, but also guys that are extremely talented. And you look at the Chelsea Academy, you look at the Man City Academy, even in Man City's case, Romeo Lavia just went from the likes of, you know, Man City to Southampton for a pretty big fee. And yes, again, maybe he didn't see that pathway into the first team, but still they had a very highly talented academy that a team like Southampton were willing to pay like 20 million for the guy. I would love if that was the case at Spurs, that maybe someone came in and spent 25 million on a guy that they might think is, you know, the next up and coming player, because at least it does show to Spurs fans that the academy is extremely talented. And also you look at Martinelli at Arsenal, he was brought in quite early, and you look at plenty of other players. I think even Will Lancashire, like Jude Sunset Bell that we brought in recently, potentially players that could be sort of really highly talented players of their age group, but just needed to be sort of like brought into a club that showed some sort of faith in them, not only through just the wage packet, but also for the fact that they say, listen, we're willing to pay you this much because we believe that you will get into this team eventually. And that's where it feels like you were saying, right? That's sort of clubs need to do one of the two things. Like the academy needs to do one of the two things. They need to either guarantee that there's a pathway into the first team, or they need to pay them close to what is kind of first team sort of wages in order to incentivize them to stay around.
Well, like the thing is, the pathway to the first team, I don't think will be a problem much more any longer, because it's something I'm going to go into deeper on another day. But if you look into Ange Postecoglou and what he done at Celtic, their B team, which is effectively like our under-21 team, he had them training and playing the same way as the first team, which bridged that gap, and also meant he had a constant eye on the B team, you know, and was able to bring some players into the first team fold. So I think he'll do something very similar with the under-21s.
Made the transition easier.
So I don't think the pathway is actually going to be a problem anymore. But it's keeping hold of the golden generation, because I've said this before. I look at it as sort of like a class of 91, right, with Man United, where a lot of their youth team at the time had won the FA Youth Cup, which was massive at the time. And they ended up going into the first team and forming a lot of Man United's success under Sir Alex Ferguson. So when you look at Tottenham, we've got a current golden generation. You've got Alfie Devine, Dorrington, Donnelly, people like that who have recently signed new contracts. Would they have signed new contracts under John McDermott's plan regime without Paratici increasing the wage structure? I'm not so sure. Mikey Moore wouldn't, because you have Real Madrid, Dortmund, who can come in and offer more money and incentivize them more as an academy prospect and take them across to their academies than what Tottenham could have under that old regime. So you potentially would have lost someone like Mikey Moore. But the fact that Paratici has increased the wage structure and stuff like that, it allows us to keep hold of the golden generation in the academy and get them to sign new contracts. But also, it allows us to attract players, top players from other academies and in lower leagues that are already playing first-team football, and bring them into our academy, like a Charlie Sawyers, Herbie James coming in from City, Callum Logan, very highly rated, coming in from Ipswich, Son Bell, like you alluded to, from Chelsea, Jack. We wouldn't have been able to do that under McDermott's wage structure in the academy. Also, you made a point about, like, for instance, Marquinhos, Gabriel Martinelli and stuff, like, for instance, that Arsenal signed and brought into the academy. But with the Brexit rules now, you know, you can't bring in players of a certain age from across the seas now. So you are going to have to start bringing them in at just over 18 years of age, between 18 and 21, and put them into your under-21s and develop them that way. So also with Paratici changing the wage structure and payment structure, it now opens it up for us to do that where we haven't done it in the past. And that's something that a lot of Spurs fans have aimed at Tottenham and criticised Tottenham for. That we don't have that scouting structure all across the world. And was that to do with maybe the payment system and the structure we had in place previous? Who knows? But Paratici's one, I think, will definitely change that. And I think you'll definitely see a lot more quality coming through. But also, like you alluded to, like, for instance, Jack, last summer, I think City made up 55 million in their transfer budget.
From the academy.
5 million of the money spent just from Southampton alone, selling the two academy products. Whereas, like before, we haven't even been able to sell them on for any money because their contracts is coming to an end and they're leaving to go elsewhere for free. Now that we're protecting them, we're obviously not naive to know that all of them are not. We're not expecting all of them to come true. Of course, some of them will fall by the wayside. But it does mean that if we have no use for them, we've protected the resale value and we can sell them on for that money, and we can increase the budget, whether it's for the academy or that goes into the first team squad and enhances that budget. So there are a lot of pluses to Paratici's, and I get it. However, I do see a lot of players nowadays on big wages that don't have that hunger and that desire that I watched in players growing up, especially players coming through the ranks, because they feel like they've already made it because of that money. That work ethic is gone. They think it's going to be like that forever. And that concerns me. It really does concern me. Also, I've seen a lot of top talents in years gone by. If you want me to go with an English talent, Ravel Morrison, too much, too soon. That hunger then, he lost it. That desire, he lost it. And he never went on to fulfill the potential he did. Dele Alli, another one, too much, too soon. Lost the hunger, lost the desire. Look at his career now. So for me, I do worry about it, but I see the pros of it. So, Jack, unless you have anything to add, I think we'll leave it to the comments.
Yeah, I think leave it to the comments. Last point I would make is what Dave just brought up there is, would you think Paratici's strategy has a better chance of keeping guys like Mikey Moore around, or to sort of, John McDermott's, sort of strategy is more in line with what you want for the academy? And also maybe the last point of Paratici's sort of strategy that I sort of like is that we can keep guys like Mikey Moore around, but also, like you said, with the Brexit rules, we then maybe with the more sort of spending power on the academy, we have a better chance of bringing in guys like a Bella Kochap from maybe abroad at a very young age to develop through the academy as well. So you sort of can kind of do both at once. You can keep the best English and UK talents around, but you can also attract some talents from abroad to sort of filter through the academy.
So look, Jack, I think we'll end the discussion now. We've given our points on it. Let's leave it open to the people in the comments to decide. Do you want John McDermott, keep them young, keep them hungry in their development and not incentivized as teenagers and young men by money? Or do you believe in Paratici's system where it's like, if you want the best academy product available to you, that comes with paying slightly more than other clubs maybe want to, or other clubs around you? So guys, in the comments, let us know what your thoughts are below. I thought it was a very interesting topic and segment. Hopefully you guys do too. And we'll see you later on. As always, come on, you Spurs. In Ange.
Big end we trust. See you, everybody. Come on, you Spurs. Great chat.
Everywhere we go.